Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Fall 2025 Investor Conference. My name is Joe Diaz. I'm a managing partner at Lytham Partners. Today, I'll be moderating a Q&A discussion with Joseph P. Hazelton, President and Chief Operating Officer of Dyadic Applied BioSolutions. Dyadic trades on NASDAQ under the ticker symbol DYAI. So let's get started. Joe, welcome. For the benefit of those in the audience not familiar with Dyadic, please give us a brief overview of the company, your technologies, and the markets in which you compete.
Well, first of all, thank you, Joe, for having me and appreciate the question. So Dyadic has actually been around for 40 years, but over the last three, we've shifted and transitioned our commercial strategy to focus less on R&D revenues and focus more on commercial revenues. So we've actually undergone over the last 3 months a rebranding strategy. We are now Dyadic Applied BioSolutions. That's what we're doing business as. But truthfully, it's more than just a name change. It is a true reevaluation of our corporate strategy to focus on commercial execution in three specific segments: life sciences, food nutrition, and bioindustrials. And we're doing that through commercialization of our filamentous fungal microbial expression technology. We have two competing platforms: our C1 platform that we use mainly for therapeutics and pharmaceutically relevant input proteins, and we have our Dapibus platform, which we use for food nutrition or bioindustrial. Both share the same, essentially the same benefits that has traditionally been experienced with Dyadic expression technologies: high productivity, low cost of goods, as well as speed to market. And that's really what we're focusing on now, is how quickly can we commercialize products rather than just licensing the technologies for others to make products. How can we start to make products that are valuable and of interest to the market today in those segments that we're targeting?
So a big part of this is that you are changing your focus to being a supplier to other technology companies, and now you're being the direct distributor to clients for your products. Are we getting that right?
Exactly. We're trying to commercialize products through partnerships like we've had with Proliant Health and Biologics. They are one of the premier partners for Dyadic Applied BioSolutions. They're launching a recombinant human albumin very, very soon here, hopefully in the early fourth quarter of this year. And that will be focused on the diagnostics and reagent space. And again, they're entering into this massive albumin market where there aren't I would say that there aren't great alternatives to very high-priced recombinants. There's animal-derived products or human-derived products, and then you have, essentially recombinant products that are very high-priced. They're one of the premier partners, and that's one of the ways that we're launching and commercializing. We're also, to your other point, beginning to supply product. We're getting ready to launch DNase I, which is a DNA and RNA basically manipulation agent. You basically cleave DNA using DNase I. And it's used in cell and gene therapy, mRNA vaccines. There's multiple uses for DNase I throughout the market. And we are getting ready to sign OEM agreements where we will supply product directly to customers, distributors, or potentially even end users. So that's one of the areas, again, that our focus is on: commercialization of products that don't require FDA review, they don't require human clinical trials. So while we continue to allow our legacy programs and biopharmaceuticals to continue to advance and we support those, our focus is on products that don't have that higher barrier to market entry.
In terms of direct competitors, what's out there? What are you up against on a day-to-day basis from a sales and marketing standpoint?
Well, I don't know. Again, because we have our own expression technology, I like to think of, rather than competition, everyone could be a potential partner, right? And while there are many competing expression platforms, on the market, what I can tell you unequivocally is there is no one expression technology that can do every protein or every enzyme that you want to do. There's always going to be a need for different expression technologies, which is why I view, the companies like, Codexis or Novozymes, while yes, they have competing expression technologies, they could also be partners and just like Dyadic, our systems can't make every protein or every enzyme that our customers or the market may want. So by having this technology, we're able to use it and fill gaps that other expression technologies may have in the market. We developed ours as an industrial host, right? So we were developing it for bioindustrial applications. So you needed large volumes of recombinant proteins, but at lower costs. And we've been able to now re-engineer our technology to produce more complex proteins like albumin or transferrin, or even human and animal therapeutics. The difference today is that we've all, I think the market's realized the demand for proteins is only increasing, and the demand for non-animal proteins is increasing at a higher rate because, again, they have better consistency, better batch-to-batch reliability. They're safer in some cases. They're more regulatorily acceptable produced recombinantly than when you produce them animal-derived, which means that all of the systems that are out there, whether you're using yeast or using CHO, everyone has a particular segment of the market where their expression technology performs probably fairly well. We just can do probably a broader segment within life sciences, food, nutrition, and bioindustrial than other technologies. So I try not to view people as enemies. I try to view it as potential partners. And where does our technology help fill gaps in the ecosystem?
Who are some of the companies that rely on your proteins?
So that's where it could be just about any of the companies today that are in life sciences, food, nutrition. But you think of companies like Thermo Fisher, Merck, Millipore, pharmaceutical companies like Novartis, GSK, Merck. They all rely on expression technology to produce either therapeutics or input proteins, for commercialization. In food and nutrition, you think of companies like Nestle or Friesland Campina. These are non-animal. These are companies that are in the dairy space, but they're evaluating non-animal dairy solutions for products in the future, to avoid some of the issues that you have with dairy products. So, as you look through the ecosystem in each of those areas, life sciences, food, nutrition, and bioindustrial, just about every large company is looking at non-animal production of proteins and enzymes to fulfill needs within their markets.
Yeah. Early on, you mentioned that Dyadic has traditionally generated most of its revenue from research collaborations, partnerships, that sort of thing. Obviously, as you indicated, this is now about to change. From your perspective, where are sales coming from over the next year, 2, 3 years out?
And that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Historically, while we've focused on grant revenues, R&D revenues to sustain Dyadic, now we're focusing on product and platform type of revenues and consistency of revenues, and they're going to come from a variety of segments within our 3 core business units. So in life sciences, we're focusing on cell culture media as well as DNA and RNA manipulation products. So in cell culture media, we have a partnership, as I mentioned, with Proliant Health and Biologics. They're launching recombinant human albumin. We also have human transferrin, bovine transferrin. These are products that are used in cell culture media as well. And we have growth factors. So as you look at cell culture media, albumin, transferrin, and growth factors make up about 90% of the cost of cell culture media. And cell culture media is basically the materials or the mix that you would use to grow things like CHO cells or HEX cells to produce human and animal therapeutics. So these are highly valued as well as high quality proteins that need to be produced to service this segment. In DNA and RNA manipulation, as I mentioned, we're getting ready to launch DNase I on our own. We've scaled up initial manufacturing in Europe right now. We're going to be able to produce ISO grade material. We're also going to be producing lab grade materials. So each of these products, depending on at what grade you manufacture at, has a different use case. Some is used in research and development. Some are used in bioproduction and bioprocessing. When you move to like food and nutrition, we have our non-animal dairy products. We have partnerships with enzymes. They're producing a non-animal dairy enzyme, which they're going to be launching. It's a food product, or it's used for cheese processing. So essentially, they're going to be launching a food grade product into the market in the fourth quarter of this year. We've already received about $1.2 million in upfront milestones from that agreement, and obviously we'll see back end product revenues as well. In equally in the food nutrition space, where we also have alpha-lactalbumin. It's basically a whey protein. So I don't know if you've heard a lot of the traction around beta-lactoglobulin. You had Perfect Day, you had quite a few other companies, Vivici, that are focusing on beta-lactoglobulin. Well, the other side of that coin is a high-value isolate called alpha-lactalbumin. It's found in cow's milk, and it's also found in human breast milk. We have high-performing strains of both a human alpha-lactalbumin and bovine alpha-lactalbumin that we're currently commercializing through partnership opportunities to continue the development in each of those segments while we evaluate launching a research grade product, because you can use human alpha-lactalbumin as a cell culture media supplement. So multiple revenue opportunities with just one strain, whether we manufacture at different grades or whether we produce it for different segments of the market, like research versus food. And then we have the bioindustrial space. And the products that we have there, the first products that are launching are those that we have in partnership with Fermbox. It's a 50-50 profit sharing partnership where we will receive 50% of the revenues from their sales of a bioprocessing or bioproduction enzyme or biomass processing enzyme. It's a cellulosic enzyme, basically reduces biomass, helps you create ethanol. So, as you look at that, we're starting to see some initial sales coming from that segment. We also have pulp and paper enzymes and other industrial enzymes that we're looking to bring to the market as well. So, in partnership with Fermbox as well as our own. So, as you look at those three segments, we have partnerships and product opportunities in all three.
And with regard to those three components, in your estimation, what are we looking at in the next 2 or 3 years in terms of the segments that will generate the most sales? Life sciences, food nutrition, bioindustrial. What's your sense of how that's going to come together in the next 2, 3 years out?
I think life sciences is going to be the accelerator. Obviously, we have our partnership with Proliant Health and Biologics that I mentioned. They're getting ready to launch. It's imminent, right? So that's obviously an area of high growth, as well as an area of focus for the entire industry. Life science proteins, especially the cell culture media, those are areas of high growth. So I definitely see that being, one of the anchors of our revenues moving forward. And then as you look to food and nutrition, I think that would be secondary, and only because you develop the strains, but then you have to then manufacture the product, get it, approved, GRAS approved, or get it approved through the EMA in Europe for use in, human food applications. Bioindustrial, I do think, is one that can actually be, commercialized a lot quicker, and simply because the barrier to entry is much lower in the industrial space. Now, the margins aren't quite as attractive, but I do see growth coming from that segment in the shorter term. So life sciences, bioindustrial will drive us in the near term, with food and nutrition kind of layering in as you look out in 2 to 3 years.
You mentioned a number of companies that are in the protein expression business, as it were. How are Dyadic's recombinant production platforms any different from some of the other protein expression platforms out there?
It's a great question. What makes ours different is that we were initially developed for industrial level, basically production, bioindustrial production. So you're talking about very large scales. So we were basically designed to produce large amounts of non-animal proteins at a very cost efficient, very cost effective prices. The difference with traditional expression platforms is they were developed to express highly complex targets, but they didn't have quite the same need to focus on either higher levels of productivity or lower costs. So while they produce, very high quality proteins, scaling them is very difficult, or scaling them efficiently and cost effectively is a little more difficult, because we were designed to do exactly that, produce large amounts of lower cost agents. We've now repurposed those engines to produce more complex targets, but still retain some of the cost benefits that you see in terms of production versus some of these traditional systems. When you're producing a therapeutic, you're not worried about margins as much as you are if you're producing something in the bioindustrial space. So when you develop those platforms, you really didn't worry about cost as much, and that's probably the main difference. both, our system as well as traditional expression systems produce quality proteins, we could just do it in larger amounts and lower costs.
Many investors are aware of protein-based healthcare products such as monoclonal antibodies, vaccines, but they may not be familiar with their source. How do expression systems like Dyadic's C1 and Dapibus underlie that ecosystem?
And essentially, it's the beginning point. So, when you want to produce a therapeutic, whether it's a monoclonal antibody as a treatment, or you want to produce a vaccine antigen, for prophylactic use, you need to start with an expression system, and it has to produce a correctly folded and modified functional protein. That's the basis for all expression systems. And essentially, that's where we fit into the process. So it's right at the very beginning. You need to express the protein of interest in an expression platform. And that's where, we really fit in. The difference obviously being, we usually produce them at higher amounts and at a more cost-effective margins than you could in traditional expression platforms. So, essentially that's the ecosystem is built on expression technology, whether you're producing monoclonals or vaccine antigens. You need to start with a system that'll produce the protein of interest at the quality as well as the cost of economics that you need.
Okay, so based on what you've said thus far, it appears that Dyadic's focus is beginning to shift toward non-therapeutic applications, which I believe have a faster pathway to revenues. Explain the evolution of this shift and what can investors expect going forward on this?
So when I joined the company 3 years ago, I was brought in to help commercialize the C1 platform, and spending the majority of my career at places like Novartis Pharmaceuticals, I really cut my teeth in basically biopharmaceuticals and biotherapeutics. And as I came into the organization, what drove the shift was essentially the cost-effective argument doesn't really apply to monoclonal antibodies. Even if you can make more for less, it really isn't about, it's about what system can I basically get these products approved the quickest in. And there were barriers to that because we hadn't been in human beings. We hadn't had a product taken through the FDA. So it was a little more risky for pharmaceutical companies to develop products in this platform. Now, it's interesting. We've done a ton of projects. And while we still believe that long term, we will find value from the biopharmaceutical industry, I quickly realized in order for us to be able to start to drive consistent revenues, we can't be relying on a product that may take 10 years to get to market. Even if you're using traditional expression technologies, from the time you produce the first, at least the first product for evaluation to the time the FDA approves it and you start to sell it, that could be 5 to 10 years. That's not, that's not a good time frame from a Dyadic standpoint. We want to look at how do we bring those revenues earlier. And that's when we started to look at life sciences as input proteins. What are those high value targets that there needs to be good non-animal solutions for that we could apply our technology? And that's when we started to look at things like albumin and things like transferrin. And that's what led to the partnership with Proliant Health and Biologics. They were looking at the market in exactly the same way. How do we replace some of these traditional proteins and enzymes that are made from animal-based sources to recombinant sources, but how do we do that economically? And that's what kind of drove that. So as I looked at the market, in order for us to drive revenue sooner, we had to look at products that didn't have that same barrier to entry, which is human clinical trials as well as FDA review and approval. And that's when we started to make this shift to look at other input proteins. And that also led us to look into food nutrition and obviously back into the bioindustrial space. These are products that don't require the same level of regulatory scrutiny or, to be honest, the same level of financial investment, not to mention time investment in these. You bring a biopharmaceutical to market, you're looking at, somewhere between $300 and $500 million in 5 to 7 years. When you look at something like recombinant albumin, we've been able to commercialize that product in under 24 months. We actually, in less than 12, we had to deal with Proliant Health and Biologics. We got $1 million up front. or I'm sorry, I think we had 500,000 up front and another 500,000 in milestones. And now we're looking at another milestone here very quickly. So we're able to drive revenue even as the product's beginning to get commercialized and they're getting ready to launch, as I said, imminently. So, we're able to bring these products from, range from years, into months. That's what we're looking to do is how do we accelerate the revenue points? And we're doing that through products that don't have that same regulatory burden or the same clinical burden that pharmaceuticals do. And that's really been the major shift. And we're doing it in food, nutrition, and bioindustrials as well.
How does the C1 expression system differ from Dapibus? How does that help your customers?
So the C1 express system differs from Dapibus in its ability to produce more complex proteins. So we've re-engineered the industrial C1 platform to produce things like monoclonal antibodies, human albumin, recombinant human transferrin. The Dapibus platform has been developed specifically for the food, nutrition, and the bioindustrial segment. So anytime you re-engineer a platform, you reduce its ability to produce more of a protein. So while C1 still has high levels of productivity, even of complex proteins, it's not particularly efficient for food, nutrition, and bioindustrial, which is where Dapibus comes in. And the benefit for our customers is that both platforms retain that industrial heritage of being able to produce larger amounts of lower cost recombinant or non-animal proteins. We can do that efficiently or effectively in both segments with either of those.
Excellent. Uh, while the company is focusing on non-therapeutic products, you're still working on a number of collaborations with outfits like the Gates Foundation and others. How do you see these relationships moving forward?
And just to be clear, we're not going to walk away from biopharmaceuticals. We will continue to support those programs. The difference today is that they will all be fully funded external partnership opportunities. We've now, engineered the platform to a point where we don't have to continue to invest dyadic dollars into developing the platform to produce these higher value therapeutics. That's the major difference. And we'll continue to support the Gates program, which is going extremely well. We actually received not too long ago another $1.5 million milestone. We've received several CEPI grants this year as well. And, as we look at that, we will continue to support those. And that's really what Mark Emelfarb, our CEO, is going to be focused on, is supporting those programs to ensure that we continue to validate the platform and have that global visibility while we're obviously waiting for the benefits of being able to produce human and animal therapeutics. It does take time to produce those. And just to give you an example of that, we actually signed a deal in 2019 with Phibro Animal Health. They're actually getting ready to enter clinical trials now. So we're in 2025. It's taken that long to develop a vaccine for the animal health world in the poultry space. And that just shows you why our focus has shifted towards these non-therapeutics. Doesn't mean we won't fully support therapeutic programs, but they'll all be fully funded external partnerships, and they won't take away our focus, our internal focus, from driving commercial revenues through our products.
And one final question on my part here. The mRNA enzyme market is several $billions according to data intel. What does this mean for Dyadic over the next handful of years?
So as you look at that market, the mRNA market, as well as cell and gene therapy, they rely on these DNA and RNA molecular biology reagents like DNase I. We view this as an attractive segment because as that market, and especially cell and gene therapy, continues to expand, they're going to need cost-effective non-animal solutions in this space. Our first entry into this is DNase I, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're getting ready to launch. We've produced it at ISO as well as lab grade, and we're getting ready to sign OEM agreements in this space where we will supply product to the market. So we view it as an attractive segment with a high unmet need that we offer, that we have the ability to offer cost-effective products. In addition to being able to offer the products, we can also license that strain. So it gives us multiple revenue opportunities, even with the same product family. So like DNase I, even as we're producing it for certain customers, we can still license that strain to companies that want to produce their own. Again, gives us multiple revenue opportunities, consistent revenue opportunities with the same strain, which is, again, a great opportunity for us.
Well, Joe, thank you. We've hit our allotted time here, and I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching this presentation. If any of you have questions or would like to schedule a meeting with Dyadic, send an email to 1x1@lythampartners.com. That's 1x1@lythampartners.com. If you'd like to learn more about Lytham Partners, you can visit our website at lythampartners.com or follow us on LinkedIn to stay connected about future events. We hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference and have a great day. Joe, thanks so much again for your time.
Thank you.